While we still do not know much about Loki's character, there is one thing about him that seems very likely. Loki is a pirate. There are a lot of hints about Loki's character that suggest this. He wears a skull on his belt, which is the universal symbol for pirates in One Piece. He has a special bounty on his head. His offer to Luffy about destroying any pirate crew for him is oddly specific. And Loki also comes from Elbaf, which is a nation where pirates are revered heroes. And even Loki's very own brother is a pirate. Now, let's say that this is true. Why is Loki being a pirate relevant? The reason is, Loki could have not just been any old pirate, but literally a pirate emperor. It is actually possible that 6 years ago, before Loki was imprisoned, he was one of the 4 emperors, along with Whitebeard, Kaido and Big Mom. What is really interesting here, however, is the timeline. 6 years before the present story is not only the year when Loki was imprisoned, it is also the year when Shanks became an emperor. Shanks is also someone with a connection to Elbaf, and someone whom Loki knows personally. What's more, Shanks is the man who originally found Luffy's sun god devil fruit, while Loki himself claims to be the sun god. This simply seems like way too many coincidences. It could be that when Loki was imprisoned 6 years ago, Shanks was involved, and that this is the event that led to him becoming an emperor of the sea. However, let's dial this back a bit. What is actually the evidence for Loki himself having been an emperor in the past? The first hint is Loki's special bounty of 2.6 billion berry, which actually is an emperor level bounty. We know this because Blackbeard became an emperor 1 year ago, and his bounty was around 2.2 billion after the time skip. Another big piece of evidence for Loki having been an emperor aside from his bounty is his likely strength. I went over this in more detail in my video about Loki actually being a Yonko level character, but essentially, him rivaling the combined might of all of the warriors of Elbaf is a feat on the level of the Yonko. This is because Elbaf is said to be the strongest nation in the world, where even without Loki, they should be able to have greater military might than even a Yonko crew. You can watch my video on a detailed breakdown as to why this is, but I will for now continue going over the reasons why Loki might have actually held the title of Yonko. Fitting a pirate with one of the highest bounties in the series, Loki appears to be a well-known figure in the New World. This is because when the giant warrior pirates told the Straw Hats about him, it is heavily implied that Jinbei had already heard about Loki. It could be that when he was still free, Loki did not only sit idly at Elbaf, but actually sailed out into the New World, which is why even Jinbei has heard about him. In other words, Loki could have actually been a very infamous pirate before his imprisonment. To sum this all up, Loki has a bounty higher than Blackbeard when he first became an emperor. He is also likely more than strong enough to be counted among the other emperors in the eyes of the One Piece world in terms of power. And, reflecting his bounty, Loki could also be an infamous figure in the New World, just like the other emperors. Essentially, Loki 6 years ago should have been both strong and notorious enough to be a Yonko. But we do know that there is one more thing to earning this title, which is territory. When Garp first introduces the emperors at NES lobby, he says that they are the 4 most powerful pirates in the world, who rule over land in the New World with an iron fist. There is a reason why characters like Mihawk, Law and Kid are not emperors, despite their bounties, which is that none of them have any territory to their name. It is however possible that Loki actually did rule over his own land in the New World. This might be something hinted at by Loki's dialogue in chapter 1131, where he is clearly very racist towards humans, and sees them as weaker and therefore inferior to giants. It could be that Loki is talking from personal experience, and that he in the past actually sailed out of Elbaf to conquer many of the human-inhabited islands of the New World. This is where we finally come back to Shanks. It could be that Loki's past territories were actually the islands that currently fly Shanks' flag. For example, one of Shanks' territories is called Gartel Island, which is the island raided by Bartolomeo during his cover story. Gartel Island is likely very close to Elbaf. This was seen when Shanks sailed there from Elbaf after the Egghead arc in just one day. Naturally, if Loki in the past was an active pirate, he would have very likely raided islands like this, where they were both close to Elbaf and inhabited by so-called puny humans. This could actually explain how Shanks got his territories. Shanks is someone who cares a lot for innocent lives being lost, where he for example sailed to Marineford with the sole intent of stopping the war. Even though he is a Yonko, it is actually hard to believe that Shanks got his territories by wanting to steal islands from other emperors. Instead, Shanks' territories could have once been islands, ruled over by Loki. Shanks could have in the past liberated these islands from Loki and placed them under his own protection. This goes back to the question brought up in the beginning. How can I convince you to press the like button for this video? Oh wait, sorry, that wasn't the question. What I meant to say was, what exactly happened 6 years ago when Loki was imprisoned and Shanks was crowned as a new emperor? While it's possible Shanks literally beat Loki in a fight, there is also reason to doubt this. When the giant warrior pirates explain Loki's backstory, they give the warriors of Elbaf sole credit for Loki being detained. These giants are Shanks' friends, so they would probably mention him if he had helped them capture Loki. It could however be that Shanks was still involved in another way. Of the different possibilities, I think the one thing that would have brought Shanks to Loki would have been Loki's claim that he is the sun god. While Shanks may not have gone to Laugh Tale and learned all of the forbidden history, he might still know some things about it, particularly when it comes to sun god Nika. It seems like too much of a coincidence that Shanks happened to raid the CP9 ship that carried the Nika fruit, and that he later looked at Luffy's new Nika form bounty poster with such a knowing look. Interestingly, learning about Nika is actually something Shanks could have accomplished fairly easily, even without the other Roger pirates telling him anything about the Void Century. Years before Loki's imprisonment, Elbaf came to house the ancient history that was researched by the scholars of Ohara, thanks to Sol rescuing all their surviving books. We know that these books actually reveal information about Sun God Nika, because Vegapunk, someone who read the books on Elbaf, actually recognized Luffy's devil fruit as being the Sun God Nika fruit. Let me present a hypothetical timeline of what Shanks might have been doing over the past 20 years. A few years after Roger's execution, Shanks could have gone to Elbaf to read the same books that Vegapunk did, and this is how he himself learned of Sun God Nika and its devil fruit. Shanks then searched the world for the devil fruit, finally finding it on the CP9 ship. Then, this fruit gets unexpectedly eaten by Luffy. Years after this, Shanks is in the New World, and starts hearing stories about Loki, who calls himself the Sun God, and is said to have a godly devil fruit power. Fearing that something could have happened to Luffy, and that Loki might be the current user of the Nika fruit, Shanks however discovers that Loki does not actually have the Nika fruit after all, and that Luffy is more than likely still alive and well. However, Shanks' encounter could have made him realize how much of a threat Loki was to the world. While the two might have not fought each other, Shanks could have helped the giants deal with Loki in other ways. While the warriors of Elbaf dealt with Loki, Shanks could have dealt with Loki's own followers. In doing so, Shanks could have liberated all of Loki's New World territories. Instead of letting them fall in the hands of other villains like Kaido and Big Mom, Shanks could have then decided to place these islands under his own protection. With Loki out of the picture, this could have been enough for the world to see Shanks as the new emperor. This could actually mirror how Luffy himself ended up becoming an emperor. By Luffy's own words, he doesn't want to rule anything. and the way he became a Yonko was by just circumstance, and him trying to help his friends. Then again, Shanks is arguably willing to play a lot more dirty than Luffy, and Loki did call Shanks a coward. Maybe Shanks did not fight Loki personally, but just did something like giving the giants the poison to knock him out. Or maybe Shanks even provided the sea stone chains that are currently holding Loki down. Or maybe, just maybe, Shanks just rang up the 5 elders, and they sent a couple admirals over to handle Loki. You can just never know what Shanks is willing to do. I should probably clarify that this is all just speculation. A lot of things I've said in this video could still not be true, whether in regards to Loki being a former emperor, or his past with Shanks. If you like these types of videos, however, you should click here to watch another video from my channel, where I go over the idea of Loki's fruit actually being the mythical Saw and Pluton devil fruit, and how he might be the literal god of death of the One Piece story. As always, thanks a lot for watching this video to the end.